Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Aging Whealthily Podcast. I am your host, Sean Smith, and I am here today. She's here, y'all. I know you've been missing her, but Bridget is here on the set with us today. Say hello to the people, Bridget.
Hello, everyone.
We're happy to have her back. And today we have a very special guest in the house. He's coming in and he's going to talk all things wealth and finance. We're going to pick his brain. We're going to get the best out of him. We're going to learn how to make millions of dollars out of that $10 we got in our bank account. Today we have Mr. Tom Martin. Tom, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I want to start today with the story. Not a statistic, not a headline, a real person. Her name was Mrs. Dorothy. She was 78 years old when I met her, a retired school teacher. She was from right here in Connecticut. 30 years in a classroom. She taught reading to kids who didn't think they could even learn. She was the kind of woman who stayed after school because some child needed her. The kind of woman whose former students still called her decades later just to say thank you. Mrs. Dorothy was dignified, sharp, proud in the best possible way. And you know what? She died broke. Not because she was reckless, not because she gambled, not because she lived beyond her means. She had worked her entire life. She had saved. She had a pension. She had a small nest egg. She did everything the way she was told to do it. But nobody told her the plan had an expiration date. Nobody sat across from her at 55 and said, Miss Dorothy, you might live to 90. Let's build for that. Nobody walked her through what inflation would do to her fixed income after 25 years. Nobody explained that her medical costs would triple in her last decade. Nobody showed her what a long life actually costs. So by the time she needed help, real help, hands-on care, someone in her home every day, the money was gone. And I'll tell you what that looked like from the inside. It looked like a woman who had given her whole life to others, having to depend on the kindness of strangers just to get through the day. It looked like her daughter, a working mother with 3 kids of her own, quitting her job to become a full-time caregiver because there was no other option. It looked like a family trying to do the right thing with no roadmap and no resources. I think about Miss Dorothy every single day because she's not the exception. She's the rule. There are millions of Miss Dorothy out there right now. People in their 40s and 50s working hard, saving, trying to do the right thing, who are walking toward a cliff that they cannot see. Not because they're foolish, because nobody showed them the full picture. That is why today's conversation exists. If you are somewhere between 40 and 65 and there is any part of you, any small voice in the back of your head, in the back of your mind, that wonders whether your money is going to hold, this episode is for you. Remember, you're not behind, you're not broken. You may just be missing a piece of the map. And today, we are going to find it. Tom Martin is a wealth management certified professional and the founder of Martin Strategic Wealth right here in Connecticut. Tom has spent his career helping individuals, families, and business owners see their full financial picture. Not just the pieces, but how everything connects. He calls it the prism view. And by the end of this conversation, you'll understand exactly why. Tom, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Tom, I just want to add something that Sean just shared, because Miss Dorothy, her story isn't just about financial. It's about what happens when love has filled all the gaps that planning left behind. We see it constantly, and that's why we here with you. And thank you, Tom, for joining us today.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was a very touching story. And there are a lot of things that are going on behind that story. I love teachers. They dedicate their lives to serving their students and their communities. And what we really have isn't really totally just a planning problem. It's a systemic problem. It's a systemic problem in that the only way to go up as a teacher is to take on more debt. If you want more pay, you need more credentials. You need to take on more debt to study for those things. And now you're paying that off with your higher payment. So it becomes hard. Secondly, teachers have access to 403B, whereas a lot of corporate people will have a 401k or 457 plan or, that nature of things. And the 403B doesn't tend to be a really great retirement vehicle. For younger teachers, it makes more sense to invest in a Roth IRA, have your money grow tax deferred, because your income is so low, it doesn't really make sense to save to a 403B, because what tax savings are you really going to have on such small income, right? So, that ends up being, an advantage that teachers can do. But they do have their pension, but they don't have Social Security. If they do get Social Security, they're subject to the WEP, which is certain other elements with taxes around pensions, where you cannot get the full amount that you're entitled to. So there is planning there that needs to be done. Like you said, you do need to be able to see cash flow over more than 5-10 years. You need to see it over 20 years. You need to see the impact of taxes and to see whether you're on track for financial independence, where your money can support your lifestyle, or whether you have a wealth gap, which is you're going to run out of money at some point in your life and you need to make changes today. That's why you need to kind of address these things in advance, because they're going to happen. It's just a matter of when. Yes, you're going to plan for A and B is going to happen, but chances are that wealth gap is going to be real. So I do feel for teachers in that respect. Yeah.
Yeah, I think teachers are some of the most underpaid and underappreciated professionals that we have in society today.
They do take on their fair share. Yes.
Oh yeah, and think about the importance of them. They mold and shape the minds of the children. This is our future.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think we do them a disservice, and we should, there should be some better compensation.
I think there was, I haven't been in the loop on it, but I think there was talks about allowing teachers recently to have Social Security under pension and not be subject to any kind of provisions that would depreciate their income from those sources. I think that would be a great game changer. They do need to save. They do need to do a little better with cash flow. A lot of people don't have access to a financial advisor. There's a lot of financial advisors there that won't work with anybody if they don't have $1 million or more. So, it becomes a little harder there. I don't have asset limits with people. I'm willing to take, even if they're not a client, they don't have to be a client. You could just jump on the call. I do have quite a bit of those calls. But yeah, they need someone in their corner rooting for them too. So my message to them would be, don't try to shoulder it yourself. Bring someone in that can see a little bit more past the forest. When you're kind of in the thick of it, it's trying to see the forest through the trees, and you make very different decisions.
Yes. Yes. So you'll hop on a call with someone, anyone, even if they're not a client. I think
I've been doing that for
commendable.
years. Yeah.
That is commendable. Now, has that eventually, in any instances, led to them becoming a client?
Of course, yeah.
Yes.
There's been a few. One of the biggest topics that I used to be popular for, even overseas, was student loans. A lot of people that have questions from student loans. Yale has a foreign program, as do a lot of schools, and Yale comes out with their own loans for these foreign students. So when they return back overseas, they're stuck with U.S. debt, and they're like, I don't know who to call. So that's when the Google will try to link us up together.
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll have those talks.
Wow, that is great.
But I get a lot of younger people too who want to know what moves they should do, and those aren't going to be typical clients for me. So I'm happy to just give them direction.
Mm, that is great. So most people think they have a money problem. You say they actually have a math problem.
Yes.
What's the difference, and why does that distinction matter so much?
Well, money is only as good as you put it to work, right? When we all make a living, we all make X amount of dollars. I work with people that make millions a year. I have people that make, 40, 50,000 a year. Um, the people that are making $1 million plus a year and have $10 million in assets, they don't feel any more financially confident than someone else does. So it's all about putting your money to work. And the concept around that is a well-known concept is pay yourself first, right? I deal with a lot of business owners, so they can be inclined to save for themselves at the end of the month, when in reality they should be paying themselves at the beginning of the month.
Yes, actually, I do some coaching for home care agency owners, and that's one of the things I just recently did a big in service on was paying yourself first, right? Putting your money to the side first, and then running your business off. You have to pay yourself. You have to run your business off what's left. Um, of course, in the beginning, you're going to take a modest pay, but as you grow, you'll be able to, take money or put more money to the side. But you have to. Just alone from being able to see some benefit from your labor, some fruit of your labor, it keeps you working, let you know what you're working toward, and makes you even work even harder because you'll say, I want to get more of this. I want to keep this going, or I want to build on this, or I want to turn up the faucet, so to speak.
It gets exciting after a point. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. What I tell, so I employ a concept called sinking funds. Sinking funds are, to me, bank accounts. So think of like a Capital One 360 account where you can open up 5, 6 different kind of checking accounts, savings accounts. There's no monthly minimums. There's no monthly fees. Nobody's calling you. So I have one in there for vacation and travel. If a client's working with me, first thing that we're going to do is set up a vacation and travel fund. And the reason why you want to do that is because you want to have really quick wins, right? So if you know you're going to go on vacation every year, that vacation is, $2,000, you need $2,000 by next year. You should divide that by really 24 and start seeding that fund biweekly. Then you have a debt-free vacation that following year. Makes sense, right? You want to use credit cards, get points? Fine. Send a prepayment from that account to your credit card. That extra capital in the account, that extra credit will actually improve or enhance your credit score because you have a surplus of money in the account. And you can swipe the card, right? Avoid the large transactions with it. So if you're booking a flight, you go book the flight. And you'll have a debt-free vacation. You'll also accumulate the points. That's great. That's one account. Next, we have an accumulation account. If I'm sitting on money in my bank account, my checking, I got to pay bills, and I don't know what to do with that money, I'm not making any money on that thing. So I'm going to open up a high yield money market account, and I will go ahead and make that my second sinking fund. So now I have money to repurpose for the future when I have an investment opportunity. I have a vacation fund to go debt-free vacations for. If I'm saving for a car, I'll have an account for that. If I have another goal for my kids, I'll have an account for that. Actually, what I like to do with kids is have an envelope with real cash in there. We have 3 envelopes. We have keep, give, and spend, right? So they have 3 accounts. So if they go to a birthday party, that's giving, right? They can give money. And I'm also teaching them values in that way. You're going to give this money, right? So my kids are accustomed to giving and to whatever kind of charity or to birthday parties. Spending is money that they can spend. They can go buy candy. They can do anything. They will buy a video game, whatever they want to do. It's up to them. They saved it. And then there's keep. And the keep is for something forward in the future. It's kind of like my accumulation account. And that's what I'll do with kids. But if you do that and you're automatically saving at the beginning of the month, vacation and travel and accumulation account, those 2 basic things, you have created opportunities for yourself down the line. 1, you're going to go on vacation and have some quick wins with that. And then 2, the accumulation account, you're going to be making some sort of investment in the future.
Right.
And then you go live your life throughout the month and pay your bills. Guess what you're going to do or not do? You're not going to go buy coffee as much because you're going to have a little less cash, right? You might be worried about not paying the mortgage or the rent. Who cares? I always tell people, save so much that you can't make that payment, and just have that money, right? Make it feel uncomfortable for yourself. If you save casually, 1, it's not going to be meaningful. 2, you're not going to have a lot.
You say you're not going to buy coffee. I have to have my Dunkin'.
You can have your Dunkin' after you seed your accounts. After that, who cares? I don't care what you do with your money. When I talk with a client like that's worth like $10 million, we don't do these things. We don't do cash flow and budgeting. But I tell them this: if I know how much you're making and I know how much you're spending, if I know how much you're making and I know how much you're saving, I just assume the rest is being spent. If you hit all your savings goals, you maxed out your 401k, you did your HSA, as you kind of grow up and you have those other kind of accounts, doesn't matter what you spend your money on. You've done all the saving.
Right.
I don't care. Doesn't matter. It won't impact your financial plan that as much.
Right. Now, so how much money does one have to save to max out their savings? Is there a hard number, or is it just based on the amount of income?
That would assume that everybody should be saving the same vehicles, and that's not true. Everybody has a unique situation. It's all impacted around taxes. For example, like the teacher situation, it doesn't really make much sense to save to those retirement accounts because you should save to the Roth and have that thing grow tax-free instead of build this big tax bomb in the future. So it's going to be different for people. What I like to do is maximize tax shelters first for most people. So for people that have significant income, we're going to max out the 401k because it's the best thing to do to lower the income taxes of your earnings. So you're keeping more of your earnings. We're going to max out the HSA, but we're not going to spend the HSA on our daily medical expenses. We're going to pay that forward for the future. We're going to let that accumulate for retirement. And if we want to retire earlier, we can take that HSA and have medical premiums get paid out of it, right? That doesn't take from their retirement income of their Social Security, right? So it doesn't hurt them in any which way. And they're all qualified expenses as long as they save their receipts for the beginning expenses, scan them in, save all those receipts, and you're good. So we have the HSA there. We have Roth, which is your after tax, right? We want to build the Roth, let that accumulate because we don't want to build a huge tax bomb. At retirement or the start of retirement, we'll start doing things like Roth conversions because we're in a 0% income tax bracket. So it makes sense. You can do a free conversion. And then, so there's the Roth, right? And then after the Roth, it's okay. It's also helpful to build. I always recommend, we all heard it, save 3 to 6 months worth of cash, right, for your living expenses. You still want to make sure you have that. Just because there are, especially if you have health policies or insurance policies, they have a 90-day window before you can get any benefits. At least that will start to help cover some expenses. I've also had people retire early and just draw on those cash savings so that they didn't have to pull from their investment accounts. We didn't need to claim Social Security at age 65. We could push it out to 67 or even 70 at some points. And so cash is king. I love cash.
Now, a lot of our listeners are, our listeners, they hit, 40, 45. Some of them are starting late in life. They're just getting started. Some in their 40s, some in their 50s. What do you recommend for them?
So when you're in your 40s and 50s, it's a very precarious window because this is typically the age range where you have kids going off to college as well. So if you have children, you really need to control your income. Otherwise, you're going to lose out on any kind of need-based scholarships for, or even maybe some grants out there too. So income is one of the biggest issues to control in your 40s and 50s. Outside of that, most people are really trying to dump some cash towards college, right? So if that's your inclination, you can open up a 529 plan with your state. If your state might offer tax benefits for those contributions, like in Connecticut, we can get up to a $10,000 deduction for state taxes by contributing to the 529 plan. Other states, like I have clients in Texas, they don't get that benefit. So it doesn't really matter what state plan we use. We can go to Vanguard or another company where they have low cost ETFs and we can really kind of let those funds grow. If you're worried that your children aren't going to go to college, you can create a taxable brokerage account. You're going to get a hit on that against any kind of need-based aid. But if you don't qualify for need-based aid, don't try to go for it. Just knock it out, cross it off, and go for merit-based scholarships. I think you'll be more directional with your strategy. What it says is, we don't need to care about what income we make. We need Johnny to get A's on his grades, get some AP courses in there, become team captain, all those kind of things, and volunteering is best. So 40s and 50s, it's still a little hard to save because you have college right there and you're saving for that. If you have it all saved, then it's preparing for retirement, and making sure that you're squared away for that. How much do you need for retirement? That everybody's retirement has a price tag, and it's all a different price. It's everything that you want to do in retirement. If you're going to be staying home, you're not going to need as much money as someone that wants to travel, from 65 to 75. That 10-year period where they're in the go-go stage and they have their health and mobility and they want to go up pyramids. You can't do that in your 70s and 80s. So college first, if that's your priority, and then retirement.
Oh, great. Now, but there's a small group of people who are really just starting from scratch. I met someone who just had nothing, right? They just went through a rough patch in their life, started getting their life together. Now they're trying to build something for those years that are coming, the retirement years, the twilight of life. Yes. What do you recommend for them?
So I never recommend investing unless you can keep that money in there for 5 years, right? Otherwise, you're subject to all the ups and downs of the markets in that short-term period. The first thing that we need to do is set up those sinking funds. Like we said, get that emergency fund funded, get the vacation fund funded so that you don't have to resort to debt. If you have debt, pay it off. The first priority is the vacation fund. That is the first priority because if we're just paying off debt and not having the joy of travel or being able to just pick our heads up from that and walk away for a little bit, you're going to burn out and you're going to go back into debt. Because if you have a health issue, if you trip and fall, you get in a car accident, you have no money to cover for that. So you're going to go back to debt to pay for it. So what we need to do is break that bond and make sure we have short-term cash there for those emergencies.
Great. So you've been sitting across from families for years. What does the face of someone look like when they realize, maybe for the first time, that their financial plan has a gap in it?
It's pretty common. It's pretty common with business owners. It's pretty common with individuals as well. We can't see past tomorrow a lot of times. We think we feel good today, but there are expenses in the future that are going to crop up, and if you don't plan for them, they're going to be a surprise, right? And then you'll have to go to debt. A lot of people actually arriving at the retirement doorsteps at age 65, and I am very surprised to see that they have tapped their equity in their house. They still owe 200 grand on their mortgage going into retirement. And that's because life has happened. They didn't want to put it on a credit card. They did a cash out refi on the house, and now they're going to retirement with that mortgage. Most people don't know they got a problem. And when they're told they have a problem, they really don't understand that just yet, right? It's when we start going through the cash flow and then we're seeing that we're running out at money at age 85, that, okay, what are we going to do? Now, if we have that conversation in your 40s and 50s, it's very different than if you're 65. There's nothing you could do, right? Your only options to cover the shortfall later in life is to work longer. And if I have to be honest, there's a lot of people that are approaching age 65 that are laid off, right? They're laid off at 62, 63. And so that brings me to my next point, is that most people don't retire on their own choice. They retire because of a health issue. They retire because the industry was laid out. Like my dad, when he was forced into retirement. So after 2008, like around 2011, my dad had lost his job. He was in the printing industry. He was dying. Those businesses were worth more just chopped up and sold versus keeping them. So he was out of a job. No one was going into printing. Everybody was starting to do digital. So he was having a hard time. So he kind of panicked. He didn't have a financial advisor at the time. I wasn't practicing at the time. Although I did tell him to sell the house. He didn't do that. He still has the house today. And if he only sold that house, he would have been in a much better situation. What did he do instead? He tried to save the house. So he cashed out his 401k.
Wow.
He saw the 401k market tanking. He panicked, took the money out, realized the loss, lost over half his portfolio, eventually just ran out of money. And then look at where we are last few years with inflation, and it's tough. He's still making ends meet, but it's not the life that I would wish for my clients, right? Of travel and spending time with family and stuff like that. So he's one of those people that have retirements where he's just kind of staying home, still doing little odd jobs at 75 or something like that. So yeah, it gets tough. So the point is, it's a lot helpful to understand if you're going to run out of money in your 40s or 50s, or potentially can, and try to figure out a plan to do that. And your options are very minimal. You can invest more aggressively, right, to get a better return on your portfolio at the risk of the ups and downs. You could spend less, which is downsizing your lifestyle. I don't know. I haven't had one person ever that turned 65, was about to retire, and they're like, this is great, let's go ahead and cut my lifestyle. They typically want to continue their lifestyle, so that's very challenging, behaviorally and emotionally. And the third thing that you can do is borrow. You could do a reverse mortgage. You could borrow money from friends and families. You can move in with your kids. And people don't want to do that, though, because they become a burden on people. So that becomes a challenge. So it's tough later in life.
So the best time is now.
Best time is now. Yes. You'll figure out if your current job and lifestyle are appropriate for the retirement you want to live. Make sure that they're in alignment with each other. If you're making good, it's not uncommon for people in corporate law to have really exceptional incomes, but they can't do that job long term. You know, a lot of kids out of college, they'll get those kind of jobs, but then they want to start slowing down and having a family. You can't have. You need to be able to save earlier in life for those kind of careers. And then business owners are a little ball of wax. Most of their equity is or net worth is really tied up in the business. So at some point they're like, well, how do we exit this business and tap the equity that's inside of it? You know, do we sell to a key employee? Do we sell to a family member? Do we sell to an outside third party member? You know, do we go through a private equity company? And it all depends on your business situation, but you need to know where you are before 10 years before you even get to that point.
So the sale of a business should be set up early on in the business.
Yes, I firmly believe that when you start a business, the only purpose there is to sell it one day. That's the only reason to open to a business. Now, there are two different types of business owners. There's enterprise business owners who think like this and look at the numbers and treat their business like a business. And then there's lifestyle business owners who take the income from their business to support their lifestyle. Maybe they're doing savings as well, but it's not going to translate into a sale to a third party because it's not worth anything. Once you remove the business owner from it, they didn't create the systems and processes and team in place, it's not going to be valuable.
Yes. And that's one of the things we teach.
Right. So anyways, business owners will typically have a wealth gap because they poured all their money into the business. Maybe they've done 401k and savings, but what they need to do is go through a process of one, understanding what the value of the business is worth, and then two, understanding what they actually need from that sale. You know, if it's worth $5 million, but all you need is one, would you be happy with 2 or 2.5? You know, maybe I would definitely retire if I didn't need the extra 2.5.
Yeah.
You know, I'd just get the money and go, you know, versus staying on for another 2 years and trying to make the business worth more. Yeah. So if you have a business, you know, you could sell it, you know, even if you're just a photographer or anything like that. If you have a remarkable business, you could sell it. It's worth something to somebody.
Right.
Yes. And so, Tom, as a woman and as someone who watches family navigate these moments, I ask you directly: women are disproportionately affected by financial insecurities in retirement. So, why is that? And what should women in midlife be doing differently right now?
So managing wealth for women is, for the most part, something new, right? It's not something that's been around for a long time. At one point in our history in the US, you know, women didn't have the rights to do those things, right? Women typically relied on the man. The man would go work and do that stuff. So today, education is one of those things that women need to invest in order to feel financially strong and secure, right? And then second, they need to bring in someone that they trust to manage the finances. You know, you can't manage your finances through hearsay and all those things, because you could lose the money and you don't know. That's just, you know, being ignorant about it. So understand what you need to do in order for you to have a really great next chapter, whatever that is. I don't like calling it retirement because there's no such thing as retirement, really, right? So, and the second thing you got to understand is that women are subject to a longer life, right? In today's medical world, you could live to 90, 95, 100 pretty easily. So making sure that you don't outlive your money is one of the best things that you do. So one, you need to make sure you have the right amount of money. And two, you got to make sure that you are using it appropriately, that you're not spending it down too fast at the beginning of retirement, right? To, let's say, going on extra trips, paying for the children and grandchildren. Women are very giving. They're very self-sacrificing. Wealth isn't, your money is not one of those things, you know. What my clients love to learn when we get to that point is, when can we start helping the kids out? And what does that look like? And you want to do it incrementally and smaller in the beginning, because one, if you don't have that foundation of teaching your children how to manage money, it's very new to them, right? And that's a whole different ball of wax. So it makes sense to, in those situations, to start giving a little bit low and smaller amounts in the beginning, see how they manage that money and what they do with it. If you have multiple children, some children are going to be financially successful, some are going to struggle. So you might not want to do a divisible 50-50 against two kids. You might want to do a 40, 60 if, the one that has the financial challenges needs more money or health issues.
So, Tom, you use a process called the Prism View. Walk us through it like we've never heard of it, because most of our listeners haven't.
So Prism View is a proprietary planning system. And if you took a prism, let's just say a pyramid prism, and you refracted it against the light, you would have so many different spectrums of color in there, right? Well, your financial plan is kind of like that, where the typical advisor prints off a financial report, and a financial plan is what they call it, and they give it to their client. They just leave it with their client. You have a whole bunch of charts, graphs, numbers, and stuff like that. It makes no sense to most people. People will just put it on a shelf. It has particularly no meaning. The Prism View process is really the art of what's possible, right? So when I'm working with a client, first thing that we do is create a balance sheet so that we know what they own and who owns it, right? In the event that one of them died, it saves the trouble of trying to figure out who owns it. Because when you die, you lose your power of signature. So you can't transfer assets over to your surviving spouse or anything like that. Things have to end up going through probate if there's no trust, right? Even if you have a will, it has to go through probate. And a probate judge at some court that you've never been to is going to say whether this is a good document or not. Wills aren't legal documents at all. They have no legal faction there until a judge says this is a good will. Because if you have a will and you have a 5-year-old child and you give everything to your 5-year-old child, well, that child can't technically inherit that money, right? They're underage, they're minority. So they need a custodial account, and they need a custodian to manage that money for them until they reach age majority, 18, right? So with the Prism View, once we lock down their balance sheet and their cash flow for at least the next 10 years, which means we know what their income is coming in, we know what the expenses are coming out, and we know what the taxes are, right? At the end of that year, we're either going to have a surplus or deficit, right? We spent more than we made, or we actually have a surplus that we can actually deploy to other investment vehicles, right? So at the end of the on these reports, you'll know whether you have a surplus. If you do have a surplus and you don't run out of money at age 95 is typically what we project out to, and you have a surplus left over, what comes next is exploring what's actually possible with that money. And it becomes challenging because they're all future dollars. We'll see that we have $1 million or $2 million at the end of the rainbow. And then we have to do some hand math to kind of bring it back into today's dollars. And we learn we have like $100,000 or $200,000 left in there. What do we do with that money? Well, if I can do some math there, I can typically figure out how much $10,000 of recurring expenses will be to them. In other words, how much capital that's going to take. So for example, if I wanted to add $10,000 of expenses forever from age 65 to age 90, I know it's going to cost me $300,000 of my surplus, right? So we get to explore what's possible. So the first thing that we explore, which is very fun, is, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, you have a surplus at the end of the rainbow. Would you be open to traveling more from age 65 to 75? Because you're going to be at your healthiest at that point. Does that make sense to you? Do you want to do that? And they'll say yes. All right, great. So now we're adding $10,000 of extra travel on top of normal annual vacation and travel. right? So some people will do that every year. Some people will do it every other year. If we don't have a lot of surplus at the end of the rainbow, we can kind of stagger it out a little bit. Maybe once every 1, 2, 3, 4 years, we can take a bigger trip. Maybe that bigger trip means going overseas to Puerto Rico and spending a month there. Maybe it means taking the kids and the grandkids and going to Disney and paying for that whole trip for them. You know, it could mean a lot of different things, right? So that's one thing. We still have more money at the end of the rainbow, right? So now it's like, okay, well, gosh, what do I want to do in retirement? The problem with retirement with people is they don't know what they're going to do in retirement. This process identifies some of the things that the client wants to do and then adding it into our financial model and testing if it's possible. If it's possible, why aren't we doing it? Right? And some of them are big purchases. People want to buy a lake house. That lake house costs $2 million. Do we have the $2 million, but are we going to be okay if we spend that $2 million? Well, what's the purpose of the lake house? It's to create, it's so that our children, so we can have memories with our children and grandchildren. Right there, that tells me, well, this is in alignment with your values that I know to be. So that checks the box. Let's do that, right? And then we start testing it in. We buy a house. We have the taxes and all that stuff applied to it. We add more property tax there. We add more expenses and upkeeps to that property, right? Because there's expenses to run that household. The more things you own, the more things you got to pay out. So if a lot of them, they, with the wealthier people, they'll say, yeah, it is. For some people, maybe not. Maybe we'll buy a cottage somewhere in New Hampshire or something like that. So it's exploring what's possible and what's not, and not just leaving it to the whims of everything. And then on top of it, if we still have more, we're paying out money in weddings, we're upgrading the house, we're gifting kids money. How are we going to know those are all possible if we don't model them? Right? If we just start giving money to the kids, we might be living with them. So the prism view process is really kind of refracting that light and really seeing what is possible in our model, from an illustrative perspective, and running with it. And then once those things are agreed to with the client, we start getting them in the works.
Nice. So you really have it thought out, planned out, and very detailed.
Yes. Detail allows us to take relentless execution. Relentless execution is not looking back and getting as much stuff done as possible. Right?
Okay.
So we've have our cash reserves, right? We have our 3 to 6 months of cash reserves. They have all their accounts. Now we're consolidating accounts to make things all efficient and support our lifestyle.
Our audience are very busy raising kids, running businesses, taking care of aging parents. They think, oh, I'll get to that later. My finances later. What do you say?
All right. So it's okay to postpone things, but we need to prioritize. There are certain things that need to happen, and there's some things that we can wait on. We can wait on the lake house, but we can't postpone consolidating investment accounts and stuff like that, because for example, if I'm working with a new client and they've had several different jobs over the years, and we have 6 different 401k plans or IRAs that are out there, if that person died, that would be such a huge pain on the surviving spouse, because they would have to go through probate and take care of all those accounts. And all those accounts have account fees. They have different investment strategies. They don't all speak to the same thing. They're probably kicking up taxes. So it's important to get those consolidated before retirement so that we can make things as easy as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. So retirement truths that nobody tells you, right? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Dorothy, she saved her whole life and still ran out of money. I want you to walk us through exactly how that happens, step by step, so that our audience can recognize the warning signs from that. Okay. Before, we want them to see it before it's too late.
There's a few things that could happen. There is the possibility that we just didn't manage our finances appropriately, or maybe we thought we had an account somewhere else to help, and we didn't have a clear view or that balance sheet, like what I'm talking about, where we know where everything is, right? So that lack of clarity there will create fractures in your plan. It will create gaps. Second thing is, if we are projecting to run out of money, if we have a home, we could still tap the equity into the home as a source to help pay. But it becomes very hard to deal with outside of that. If you are renting and you have no money, you can't borrow to fund your retirement, outside of what's in what you have. One of the things that I recommend people to have before they do retire is to take out a home equity line of credit. They're not going to give it to you after you retire because you don't have a job, right? So it's important to plan for that and make sure that that's there for you. Now, you have to promise yourself you'll never use it. You have to pay a $50 fee typically to manage this account annually. But if something happens, you can tap into that home equity line of credit over cashing out a lot of your investments and kicking up taxes and becoming inefficient, right? So why does this happen? Why do we run out of money? Well, there's a lack of foresight. We didn't do any planning. Two, probably the most likely, we had a health event, we had medical bills, and we just had to pay those, and we liquidated our investments to kind of take care of that. There could be a divorce, right? A divorce is pretty much a reset. It's definitely a wealth destroyer out there. You have half the money, plus you have legal fees on top of it. So those are pretty much the only things that you can do if you arrive there and you find out you don't have money because you're reactive. So my company is called Martin Strategic Wealth because the strategic side of it. We're forward thinking. We're very proactive. We see those problems down the line. If you're going to run out of money, we're going to know years before. And then we will have to discuss what happens then. That extra time and planning, even though you might not be able to recover from it, will help you plan appropriately what you're going to do with housing, what kind of government or assistance programs you qualify for, rather than running out the day of and then trying to figure out what to do.
If someone who's 55 years old right now, what are three things that most likely to blow up their retirement that they are not even thinking of?
So that is 10 years before a traditional retirement of age 65, right? Which is the prime window to start planning for retirement. Now, your question was what?
Three things that will help them blow up their retirement that they're not considering right now.
And when you say blow up, is that improve?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So at age 55, there's some magical things that happen. One, you're over the age of 50, so you can do an extra catch-up provision in your 401k plan or 403b plan. You should take advantage of that. If you're behind in savings, again, you should do a financial plan to know if you're on track for retirement and what you need to do beforehand. But if you don't have one and you're not inclined to do one, you can go ahead and contribute more to your 401k. At age 60, they just started a new program last year that said if you're at the age between age 60 and 63, you can contribute even more to more than the catch-up provision to your retirement plan. So that's a great way for you to dump some money. That assumes that you have the cash flow to do it, and hopefully you're not still funding college and stuff like that. At some point, you do need to prioritize your retirement over the kids' college. There are things for student loans out there. Your kids can pay those off. You don't need to put yourself on the cross for it, especially if it means that your retirement plan is going to be them, right? So save more to your 401k is one. Second thing you need to do is understand what you're going to do for healthcare. If you're not going to retire at 65 and you want to retire at 63 because you just can't take it anymore, a lot of people get to that point. Or if you've been just ousted from the job because there are certain careers that will just phase out. We don't need them anymore. My dad went through that in the printing industry. So what else can we do? So we can maximize our HSA accounts. If you get access to that, if you have healthcare through work, you might want to switch from a copay plan, which is more expensive than an HSA plan. To start the HSA plan, you'll get the tax deductions for making the contributions to it. If it grows to a certain point, you can invest that HSA, and any kind of growth on that will come out 100% tax free. So it's a great vehicle. If you want to retire at 63, your biggest problem is healthcare. If you're going to pay for that out of your pocket, you're going to be spending a lot quicker, spending down your assets a lot quicker at the start of retirement. So the HSA plan is great because you can go ahead and make your medical contributions out of that plan if you have a good amount, and that can cover your healthcare expenses if you do want to retire early. So that's probably another thing that I would do, is just make sure your healthcare plans are all in place. The third thing that almost every pre-retiree needs to do 10 years before retirement is pay down your debt. If you owe things on the car, if you owe things on the house, if you owe loans, these are all things that are going to take away from your fixed income of whatever it is that you have, Social Security or pensions, and that you're going to feel those expenses. The last thing on number 4, a bonus item that I would do, is start a business. Start a business, start a real LLC business, do some side jobs out there in retirement, and you can get a whole lot of tax benefits for doing that. You can write off a lot of your shared space expenses like utilities through the business. You get the qualified business income deduction for the QBI deduction. There's a lot of benefits for starting an LLC.
Well, I've been seeing a lot of aging population who are starting businesses. I've seen quite a bit of it lately, and I didn't understand it for what it is. So now you let me know the tax implications and the benefits of having one. It actually is a genius move.
Yeah, and if you're in an opportunity zone, you can get a lot of tax benefits, even money from the government to help fund your business. If you're in one of those challenged neighborhoods.
Really?
Yes.
Well, we got to talk more about that after.
So the SBA will have funds for you too. So you got to find those free monies.
Absolutely.
So yeah, those are three things I'd say. Max out your 401ks. You're given the opportunity to do that. Pay off your debt, and take care of your healthcare expenses, and then start a business if you can.
The bonus, start a business.
The bonus is the gift.
Yes. So Tom, people are living longer. A woman who's 60 could live 90 and beyond. What does retirement plan actually need to look like when you're planning for your 30-year retirement, and not a 15-year one?
Are we talking about married? Like, what's the family setup for this?
Yeah, married.
Married and children. So when you're a woman and you want to retire, what your question is, what are things you should do?
Right. How can you make it easily? I mean, what does retirement plan actually need to look like when you're planning for the 30-year retirement?
Okay, so something that applies to everybody is that transition from working or whatever it is that you do to retirement, and what that means. So if anyone wants to go through this, I have a blueprinting guide, and the blueprinting guide kind of gives you a purpose. A lot of people don't have purpose into retirement, and it causes a little bit of problems in the beginning of retirement, because every day just becomes a Saturday. And what do people do on Saturdays?
Shop.
They shop. They spend. Every day is spending. So the best thing I can say is you need to break out a notebook and start writing down what you want your life to look like. From the morning, what you do. Is it going to be breakfast with the girls? Is it going to be reaching out your family? To what you want to do from Monday through Sunday. Just kind of map out what that looks like. And then also try to figure out what you want more of in your life and what you want less of in your life, right? This is all going to tie into your overall mental health. So if there are things in your life that you want less of, write those down, work on trying to get those out of your life. There could be that gossipy girl that just yaps all negative things in your ears. We need to get rid of her because that negative, you need to protect what goes into your ears, your eyes, and your mouth, you know, and start figuring out how to take better care of yourself. We need mental health, spiritual health, and physical health. Those all need to be balanced. When they're not, you're going to just have problems. Your body, I was listening to something, I don't know if it was a podcast or something like that, where it's like, you don't need to be sick. If your brain thinks you're sick, you're going to become sick. We've all done this in school, right? Please, God, give me snow. I'm so sick. I can't go. I got a fever. Guess what? Your head's hot. So let's take care of our mental health and what that means. We were discussing this earlier, and even your bedtime routine could be put into this. Having a full night of sleep, blocking out all the sun. If you know that Alzheimer's is an issue, dementia is an issue, figure out what adds to those things and start improving your life. Become educated in those things. You're going to live long, so please make it healthy. If you make it healthy, it'll cost you less. You'll be less likely to run out of money.
Absolutely. That's very well put. And I think most people hear it. We have all these other, there's much more to us than just the physical. Mm-hmm. Much more than just, money. Let's get the mind, the body, the spirit, let's get them all aligned. And then life becomes so much more pleasant, so much more peaceful, so much more harmonious when we do that.
Exactly. Know what you want, know what you desire, give gratitude, and take care of your temple.
Absolutely. And there's no better time to do that than now, but there's no easier time than in retirement. You have the time.
You do have the time.
I find that I struggle with finding time to do a lot of the things that I would enjoy doing, because you're trying to make a living, you're out here trying to make money, you have all these responsibilities, you got meetings, you got this, and by the time you get to the end of the day, if you're not physically drained, a lot of times you're mentally exhausted. But when you're in retirement, you have time.
Yeah, and for some people, it might be giving back to the community too.
Yes.
Figure out what you need, what you want, and start planning them in.
Yes. So let's talk about sequence of returns. It sounds technical, but I've heard you say it, and it's one of the biggest risks that nobody talks about. I want you to break that down for somebody who's never heard that phrase before.
Yeah, so sequence of returns is something that financial advisors use. I'm not going to get too technical into it because it could be going into giving investment advice with it, if that's all right.
That's okay.
But let's talk about the order of spending down your assets. So for most people, they're working, they're getting a job, they're making a living. Let's just call it $60,000 a year or whatever it is. When you do retire, how much income do you actually need, and where is it going to come from? Some people will just start pulling money from their IRA accounts, and kicking up taxes, and it could be problematic. For example, if you retire at age 65, that's not full retirement age. Age 67 is for most people. So if you start drawing more than, I think, what is 24,000 of income, your Social Security payment will start to get reduced. So for every $2 over that limit, your Social Security benefit will get reduced by $1, right? Wow. So it's very important that we understand how drawing money from our various different income sources is going to impact taxes and Social Security. If you're taking out so much income that you're not seeing the Social Security, you will get that money back later at age 67 once you get your full retirement age. But now you started Social Security, you did it in a way that you're going to get permanently penalized on it because your benefits are permanently reduced. by that. And not only that, if you're the breadwinner and you die, your spouse's survivor benefit is also going to get permanently reduced. So understanding where your income sources are earlier in retirement is very important. So for example, one of my clients wanted to retire early at 63. We knew we weren't going to claim Social Security till 67. So we piled up a bunch of cash, and he's just been living off the cash. You know what his tax bracket is? 0. Why? Because it's not kicking up any income. You know, he might have a little bit of dividends and stuff like that from money market accounts, but he's not getting penalized whatsoever. So now we can do free Roth conversions and everything like that. And then at age 67, we turn on Social Security. We'll turn on we'll have access to our investment accounts too. And so for me, that's kind of, it's very important to understand what sources of income are going to pay for or replace your income, and how and when.
Gotcha. So what's the biggest single mistake you see people make in the 5 years right before they retire? I see you smile about this, but it must be a good one.
The biggest mistake is thinking that you can do it by yourself. Now, some people can, but it's not wise. It's like if you're an attorney practicing law for your own case. It's like a doctor performing surgeries on themselves. You know, it's that whole forest through the tree situation. You can't see what's happening, and you're not looking into the future. You can only be reactive when you manage your stuff. You can save for the future and stuff like that, but you're going to run out of money. You don't understand tax law. You don't understand estate planning law. I have a lot of people that even hire attorneys for drafting wills and trusts, and those clients don't know what those documents say. That's a problem.
Right.
They could have hired them. They did it. They checked the box, but they don't know what it says. They trusted the attorney. They told the attorney what they wanted, and they got a document. Looks okay. Looks like a normal document. But when you consider how attorneys get paid, I would question it. How do attorneys get paid?
Litigation.
Guess what has to happen if there's a problem with the trusts and kids don't agree? They got to litigate each other. So if you don't know what those documents say, I can't tell you how many times I meet with an estate planner and a document. I connect them together. I'm in on the meetings. We get a draft back, and it's primarily drafted for taxes when that family is never going to be subject to estate tax. They don't have $15-20 million, right? So why didn't you do the asset protection? My biggest thing is I want to keep the money in the family. I want to make sure our kids aren't accidentally disinherited. I want to make sure that my child's future ex-wife doesn't take half of his inheritance away. So we got to lock them up. So to answer your question, don't do it yourself. Always get consult. Or if you want to do it yourself, but still hire the consult.
All right, Tom. So most people in their 50s think tax strategy is for rich people. And we can tell from your last answer that that's not true. But what are they leaving on the table by believing that or thinking that?
That tax strategy doesn't really matter. So Judge Learned Hand once said something to the point that that we're not liable to pay more than our fair share in taxes, right? So there are plenty of people that I come across, they're paying more in taxes. I'll give you one situation. I had one of this S-Corp owner. They owned a very successful photography company, and like they're making like $500,000-$700,000 a year, right? And I was trying to get them as a client. I know them, come across them. They're launching another business right now, so their capacity is like really tapped out. And they were paying more than their fair share. And what they were doing was they were forcing their income down to the point where they were trying to save on payroll taxes, that the type of retirement plan that they had, which was a SEP IRA, wouldn't allow them to fund more than $10,000 for their retirement account, right? So in the 401k, you could save up to $24,000 if you're below age 50. So $10,000, not a lot of money. And when I looked at these people, I thought they were wildly successful too. So that one decision made a cascading amount of financial decisions in against them. That qualified business income deduction, QBI deduction, they weren't able to deduct as much as they could from their business expenses because their income was forced down. So there was that. So there was 401k, there was the business deduction there. So they were just bleeding money. And I calculated it over the cost from today to when they retired, it would be equivalent to $1.2 million.
Wow.
That's a significant amount of money.
Yes, it is.
And their main complaint right now or today was they're paying way too much for health insurance. Well, guess why you're paying too much for health insurance? You're not tucking away the money in your 401k and alleviating that tax pressure, right? So that is probably one of the best descriptions I could say, where someone was like, I don't really care about the tax consequence. I'm busy right now with my hustle. I'll worry about it later.
Right.
So that shocked me.
Yeah. Wow.
Really?
Very shocking.
I was trying to justify my expense for the financial plan, which was a fraction of what they would have gained in benefits.
Who has $1 million plus to leave on the table?
Well, it happens. It happens a lot of different ways. One, just on that tax saving, but people do it on debt all the time, right? They stack on the debt. You know what those interest rates are? They're like 30%. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yes. And you don't think about it because you're thinking, oh wow, I'm making the money, so you don't really think about it. But
there's a reason why. The reason why, from my perspective, is people don't think in terms of annual income and expenses. They just think monthly, right? I could afford a car because I could afford the monthly payment. They don't understand the future impact of it because they're thinking monthly. Their future is at the end of the year. It's not 10 years. So
you're absolutely right.
Okay, I want to ask about legacy.
Legacy is my favorite topic.
This is something I feel deeply about. What do most families get wrong when it comes to leaving something behind for the people they love?
Their biggest fault is not preparing that future generation to receive the wealth. They didn't pass on anything. For example, just put yourselves in that situation. Let's say you have accumulated $1 million today, right? And that when you pass, or at some point in your life, you want to pass off some of that to your kids, and you do. They have no legacy story behind that, right? There's no history. They don't know what it took for you to get to the point to get that $1 million. They just won the lotto. What happens when people win the lotto? They give it back, right? So that's the biggest mistake. Now, here's how you can rectify that. So if you are going to create a legacy for your children, take a journal, write down what that money means to you, how you got it, and pass that on to your children. And they will read through it and they'll be like, wow, I didn't know that. Now we're attaching emotion to dollars, right? You need to attach emotion to it.
Right.
Well, I agree. In values, when we think about legacy and talk about leaving a legacy, and most of the time when we talk about it, we're talking from just a monetary standpoint. But a part of that is leaving values, tradition, culture, because those are some of the things that's going to help to preserve it for them, or help them to preserve it. And even like you saying, leave a journal, leave some sort of catalog, leave something so they understand that everything, just not just everything that went into earning it, but why. Why was it important for us to be able to go out? Why was it important for us to work so hard? Why was it important for us to be able to leave this legacy? One, the money, but also the values, the tradition, the culture, and everything that we gave in your lifetime and beyond our lifetime and beyond our lifetimes. Because it's much more than just the money.
It is. It is. You can create a trust for your children, right, and have a pot of gold in there, and they wouldn't be able to abuse it or anything like that. But without that value, that history, the first moment that those kids have, they'll probably unwind the trust, right? Unwind what you did if they're able to. That's why I recommend, or I mandate, that when our clients set up a trust, that if their children want to do something like that, that they have to spend 1 hour with an attorney to get an education on why we put together the trust.
I like that. I like that.
What is one conversation that couples in their 50s are avoiding, and the one that could protect everything they've built, and why do so few of them have it?
So the biggest discussion people will probably have is spending money, or more specifically, not spending it. Whereas my job is to help them realize that they can spend it, right? With the Prism View process and that whole art of possibility, I want my clients to spend their money. I don't want them to amass wealth and not have any fruits from it and just pass it down to their kids who are going to blow it on who knows what. So what people need to do and understand, and this goes back to your other question too, with women and what to do in retirement, and that whole blueprinting, is understand what you're going to be doing in retirement. What we need to do, from my perspective as a planner, is to put a price tag on it. I need to know how much it costs, because if I don't know how much it costs, I can't kick you out the money to pay for it, right? Or if I don't even know it exists, if you haven't communicated to it. So I would, if I was preparing for retirement, I would start dreaming, talking about some of the places that we want to do, maybe work with a financial planner that can show you that those things are possible, right? And then start planning them. 2027, we're going to go to Puerto Rico. 2030, we're going to take the grandkids to Disney. It's all, with my clients, it's all mapped. It's done. Do things come up? Sure. But I have a bucket of money that accounts for those bumper expenses, as unplanned expenses is what I call them. Yeah. Yes. So spend the money if you can.
That's it. All right, Tom, you work with business owners, people who have built something probably over 20, 30 years. Now, what does it look like when a business owner gets to the retirement and they realize that their exit plan wasn't really a plan at all?
Right. So a lot of business owners have a plan. They have a plan to sell to a third-party person, but not many actually translate into an actual sale. Like 80% of business owners that plan to sell don't even go to the market to sell, or can't sell. So there's a few things that business owners need to kind of understand. Most business owners want to take care of their employees. They're very grateful for their years of service. They want to take care of them. Maybe we introduce something like an ESOP into the program where those employees can own shares of the company, become owners of it, right? That helps facilitate a transition, because they have buy-in. It's their company. They want the stock to appreciate. And it provides a business owner an easy way to kind of get out of the business where they don't need to sell, right? Because we have the ESOP to do it. So with business owners, they first need to know what they need from a sale. Like, how much do you need to sell the business for? If you need $5 million for the business, is that after tax? Is that before tax? So in our financial model, when we're modeling a sale of a business, what we're trying to do is figure out what that $5 million is after tax, and modeling that and stress testing it against our portfolio. If we're expecting a 6% rate of return, long-term return on investments, and that makes us get across the finish line and then some, well, what happens if the markets only do 5%? Or what if we only get 4%? Will we still make it? My answer is probably not, because there's a very big difference between those two and compression of fees over time. So know what you need to sell the business for after tax, and then know what your business is worth, right? So if you need 5 million and it's only worth 3 million today, or 2 million, or 1, or it's not worth anything, then what are the steps that we need to do to get to that point? All right, so that's going to involve bringing on team, making sure that we have an executive staff there, like a vice president, something like that, and start increasing our value. Now, when I say that business might be only worth $3 million or nothing at its stage, that's because it falls within a certain spectrum on a value acceleration model, which is what us CEPAs follow. And then from there, there's also a multiplier, which is industry standard. You get like 2 to 3 times your EBITDA, your earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. And then start kicking off what's called 90-day sprints. So every 90 days, we go through this process with our business owners, and the decision that has to be made is, do we grow or do we sell? If at the end of the 90 days, the owner's like, yeah, I still want to stay in the business and stuff like that, then we're still in growth mode and we're still working on a checklist item, again, relentless action, right? Mm-hmm. So we're taking action to increase the value of our business over time every 90 days. And then at the end of that 90 days, we'll have that assessment again. Do we grow? Do we sell? We'll have meeting with their staff and a meeting with the owner itself, and just trying to understand those values and where they are. And at some point, the owner is going to be like, okay, I'm ready to sell. I've had people sell businesses for 10, 15, 20, $50 million. So they're pretty sizable events, liquidity events that need to happen. Of course, paying the taxes isn't great too, because they're like $1-2 million in taxes. But the whole thing is to understand where the owner is. Are they still in a growth stage, or are they in a sell stage? And that's why it takes years to get a business ready to sell. I would say the least amount of time, probably 5 years, 3 to 5 years to sell a business, just to prepare for that. Yes. Most businesses will probably sell because the business owner had a health event and now they're forced into a situation. And when that buyer sees what's happening and understands what's happening, and they're going to assume it's going to be a health event, they're going to start discounting the sale.
Let's get to our rapid fire section. We're going to go through a rapid fire section. So this is our segment. So we're going to ask you a question. All right. You're going to give a real answer, no overthinking. Just blurt it out. All right. So I'm going to ask a question. You blurt it out. You ready? Yeah. All right. Biggest money myth people in their 50s still believe?
That you're going to make it until age 90, 95. Well, no, I would say the biggest myth is that you're going to live longer than you expected. Probably the biggest one right now.
There's one thing someone can do this week to get their financial house in order.
Hire a financial planner.
I want you to finish this sentence. Most people wait too long to
plan.
Best money decision you ever made personally?
Building an emergency fund.
Worst money advice you keep hearing that makes you cringe?
Invest in solar.
401k or Roth IRA? If someone could only choose one at 50, which one and why?
I'd probably say 401k, because after age 50, you get the chance to do the catch-up contributions in there.
What does aging wealthily mean to you personally, not professionally, personally.
Aging Wealthily is risk management at its best. One, you're focusing on the wealth side of it so that you have money. Money or wealth is freedom. It's the freedom to live the lifestyle that you want. It's freedom of not having to worry about financial worries or possibly even your children. And at its very best, the wealth side of it is being able to transfer that wealth to the next generation. Living healthily means protecting your wealth, less that you have to spend in medical expenses, the more of the money that you get to keep.
One book, podcast, or resource every person in midlife should have.
There is a book. I might have to look it up on my, because it's been a hot.
I'll allow you one lookup.
So there is a book that I always go back to. The first one is called Savvy Estate Planning, because we all need to know how estate planning works. And then on the financial side of things, it is Your Money, Your Life by Vicki Robin. It's an excellent book on how to understand different perspectives of money.
Okay. If you had to give one line of financial advice to your 40-year-old self, what is it?
Do it. Whatever it is, do it.
All right. Last thing. Every guest we have, we always ask them about a letter to their younger self. What would you tell your younger self right now?
I'd tell my younger self to take more risks, be courageous, do it. If the only repercussion of doing it is you have to go back to what you were doing before because it didn't work out, that's great. Do it. Take the risk.
All right, Tom. So for someone who's looking to work with you or find out some information or even take advantage of that free advice you give, that free phone call they can have with you, how would they get in touch with you?
All they need to do is just visit my website at martinstrategicwealth.com. In the top right, there is a button there that's called Schedule a Clarity Session. Clarity Session ties into that whole PRISM theme, and that's available for everybody. So if you don't have to be a client. If you want some advice or something like that, I might have to ask you just some questions so that I can understand your situation a little bit, but we'll get you an answer that day.
All right, great. And we'll have all your information down in the description section of this video, so they'll be able to go in there. We'll make sure they're live links so they can click right on it and get right to you, because there are a lot of people. Matter of fact, I'm pretty much sure that maybe 90% of the people who are going to hear this need to take advantage of that call, need to ingest this information and make some changes, do some assessment of their status right now and what their retirement is going to look like. This is a very serious thing. And we hope that we can have you back, that you will come back in.
Can I say one thing? It's just a disclaimer on this, just because I take my job seriously. Everything that we discussed here today is for educational purposes only. It's not meant to be construed as personal financial advice. Obviously, I don't know anything about your personal financial situation, so please contact your tax, legal, and/or financial advisor. Of course, if you are looking for a financial advisor, I happen to be taking on some new clients. I'd love the opportunity to talk with you, and that's it.
All right. Thank you. So we have to have you back. We definitely will. We need you to come back.
What other health topics are we going to talk about?
Well, we got a whole bunch there. We haven't even scratched the surface yet on what there is to discuss. But I want to thank you all for joining us today on Aging Whealthily Podcast. We will see you next week with a brand new guest and a brand new story. Bye for now.